Good evening. Thanks for joining us on Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. The rupee hits a one-month low after a sharp fall in late trade. Higher trade deficits, strengthening dollar and uncertainty over the U.S. trade deal weigh on sentiment. Dealers say the RBI is not supplying dollars adequately. The Sensex and the Nifty snap a two-day losing streak but end a volatile week flat. Bank stocks and mid-caps outperform. Reliance Industries is set to report a steady Q3. Weakness in oil and gas segments likely to be offset by strong growth in O2C, telecom and retail. Profits likely to rise over 6% even as revenues are seen declining by 3%. SEBI releases a consultation paper on permitting netting, a framework that would allow FPIs to square off trades within the same day instead of settling each transaction individually. SEBI Chief Tuin Kanta Pandey told CNBC-TV18 in a proposed framework will allow operational efficiency for market participants. The government is likely to increase FDI limit for defence companies with existing licences from 49% to 74% under the automatic route. Sources say the Department for Industry and Trade Promotion is likely to liberalise the FDI regime. Days after the U.S. captured Nicolás Maduro, Venezuela's opposition leader Maria Mercado presents her Nobel Peace Prize medal to President Trump at the White House. Trump calls it a wonderful gesture of mutual respect. Nobel organizers say a medal can change owners, but the title of a Nobel laureate cannot. President Trump pulls back from plans to attack Iran after a warning from Gulf states Turkey and Israel. Economic Times reports that India is likely to exit from Iran's Chabahar port, but no official word from the government yet. A World Economic Forum survey among chief economists raises the red flag on public debt across emerging economies. Outlook for global growth remains weak despite marginal improvement. Nearly 60% of those polled expect modest to significant job losses due to artificial intelligence over the next 10 years. From Mumbai to Nagpur, BJP-led Mahayuti sweeps the Maharashtra civic elections. Mumbai is likely to get its first ever BJP mayor after the party emerges as the single largest. Uddhav Thackeray faction outperforms Shiv Sena's Shinde faction in Mumbai. The Pawar faction faces humiliating defeat in Pune and neighbouring civic bodies. Well, let's go straight to the top story this evening. The rupee has hit its lowest level in a month after a sharp decline that we saw in late trade. Now, the rupee has been the worst performing currency today after December trade data showed a decline in exports and trade deficit widened to cross $25 billion. A strengthening US dollar and uncertainty over the US trade deal also weighing on sentiment. Dealers also say the RBI is not supplying dollars adequately. Lata's here with more on the weakness that we are seeing in the rupee. Lata, what is weighing on sentiment? But more importantly, what seems to be the thinking within the RBI?
Yes, it was a rather bad day for the rupee. It was the worst performing currency among Asian and among EM currencies in general, falling about 0.6%, about 55-60 pies versus the dollar. The bearish sentiment was initially triggered by the December trade data that came yesterday. It did show that the deficit has slightly widened by about $500 million. It was $24.5 billion in November. It went up to $25 billion goods trade deficit for the month of December. And the important point was the tariffs are now showing. The exports to the US have fallen by 7% from November levels. So it's starting to bite. That's also ruined sentiment a bit. Even electronics and services were good, but not outstanding. So the fear in the market is there about how big would the current account deficit be. But the bigger problem is capital flows. Foreign funds have been big sellers in January. There has been no let-up, and that appears to have been the case today also. They're selling equities, buying dollars and remitting. Normally, you have the Reserve Bank supplying dollars as a counterweight. Dealers say it appears the Reserve Bank has not supplied much today and has allowed the rupee to take its own direction. All told, this doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon. The initial number that everyone is looking at in the market is 91.03, which is the all-time closing low reached on December 16, and 91.07 per dollar, which was hit on December 17.
Well, Lata, many thanks for joining us. A new low there for the rupee. From the currency market to the equity market, the Sensex and the Nifty snapped their two-day losing streak but ended off their intraday highs. Nearly 30 Nifty stocks closing in the red. The Nifty Bank, though, outperformed. Nifty Bank was up by about 500 points. Flat close for both the Sensex and the Nifty today. Today we saw some key bank earnings like Federal Bank, etc. That stock was in focus. And of course, we do have bank earnings tomorrow as well. But let's bring up the picture for the week. The Sensex and the Nifty have ended flat while the broader markets outperformed. That's the picture for the week, just about in the red and just about in the green for the Nifty and the mid-cap index closing slightly higher. Capital market, PSU banks and metal stocks were the biggest gainers for the week. Now on to the energy market, where oil prices rose as market participants weighed concerns about supply risks. However, receding chances of a US strike on Iran has limited gains. Prices are on track for a fourth straight week of gains. That's the latest as far as oil is concerned. And metal prices fell globally on the back of reports of China's crackdown on high-frequency trading. Beijing's move follows intense activity in mainland futures that fueled global price rise. Chinese regulators have ordered bosses to remove servers operated by high-frequency traders from their data centers. Prices of precious metals also fell. Gold and silver prices also declined on hopes that geopolitical tensions have softened. A stronger dollar index also weighing on prices. Market regulator SEBI has released a consultation paper on netting today. The framework allows foreign portfolio investors to offset buy and sell trades within the same day, instead of settling each transaction individually. Now, speaking with Lata at SEBI's annual conference, the SEBI chief Tuhin Kantapande said the proposed framework will allow operational efficiency for market participants, especially FPIs.
Other points, of course, we are looking at very closely is netting. And I think the consultation paper will be out very, very soon on this to allow them to net in some respects so that there is a greater operational efficiency while they operate.
Well, that is the SEBI chief, and that proposal has been made public today. The big global story: Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado presented her 2025 Nobel Peace Prize medal to President Trump at the White House, as was widely expected. Now, Trump has praised Machado and said that the medal was presented to him for the work he's done. However, the Nobel Prize Committee has clarified that the medal can change hands or owners, but the title itself cannot be transferred. Now, this comes nearly 15 days after the U.S. military captured Venezuelan President Maduro. Take a look.
I presented the President of the United States the medal of the Nobel Peace Prize.
Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado said she presented U.S. President Donald Trump with her Nobel Peace Prize during a meeting at the White House on Thursday. Machado spoke after finishing separate meetings with Trump and U.S. senators, where she was met by a large crowd of media and supporters. Earlier, she said her meeting with Trump went very well. Machado, who fled Venezuela in December, is competing for Trump's ear with members of Venezuela's government and seeking to ensure she has a role in governing the nation going forward. She was banned from running in Venezuela's 2024 presidential election by a top court that was stacked with allies of longtime leader Nicolas Maduro. While he claimed victory, outside observers widely believed Edmundo Gonzalez, an opposition figure backed by Machado, won more votes by a substantial margin. But as their meeting was taking place, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said Trump stood by his assessment that she did not have the support needed to lead the country in the short term.
And at this moment in time, his opinion on that matter has not changed.
Trump has on several occasions praised Delcy Rodriguez, Maduro's second-in-command, who became Venezuela's president after the U.S. captured Maduro in a snatch-and-grab operation this month. Leavitt said that, so far, Rodriguez has been cooperating.
Venezuela and Ms. Rodriguez have also confirmed that they will be releasing political prisoners from Venezuela. There were 5 Americans who were recently released this week as well. So the president likes what he's seeing and will expect that cooperation to continue.
While the current government has freed dozens of political prisoners in recent days, outside groups and advocates have said the scale of the releases has been exaggerated by Caracas. Separately in Venezuela, Rodriguez spoke in an annual presidential address to lawmakers. She said she would propose reforms to her country's oil industry as investors in the U.S. push for easier access to it.
And President Trump has threatened to deploy troops in Minnesota to quell protests against immigration enforcement authorities. Trump warned he would invoke the Insurrection Act to send in the military if officials fail to quell protests. Demonstrations, which began after ICE agents shot a woman dead, intensified after authorities shot a second person yesterday. European nations, including France and Germany, have sent their troops to Greenland. This is an attempt to boost the Arctic island security. The military deployment came after Denmark and Greenland's foreign ministers met U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance last week. Following the meeting, Danish foreign minister had said that there was a fundamental disagreement between the two sides, also criticized Trump's bid to acquire Greenland. The United Nations Security Council held an emergency meeting over deadly protests in Iran. Iran's deputy UN envoy told the council that the country does not seek confrontation, but would respond to any U.S. aggression. He also accused Washington of fueling unrest. U.S. Representative Mike Waltz said that President Trump was a man of action who had made it clear that every option remained open to stop Iran from killing protesters. The White House has said that Iran has halted the execution of 800 demonstrators. Speaking to the press, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said President Trump warned Tehran of grave consequences if the killing of demonstrators continued. Meanwhile, Economic Times reports that India is likely to exit the Chabahar project. This comes after President Trump had announced Iran's trade partners will have to face a 25% additional tariff. There is no official word from the government so far. The government is likely to hike FDI limit for defence companies with existing licences under the automatic route. Sources have said that the Department for Industry and Trade Promotion is likely to liberalise the FDI regime. Parikshit is standing by with more. Parikshit, what does this mean for the defence sector?
Well, this coincides with the government planning to announce the biggest possible capex and manufacturing push for the defence sector in the union budget. The Defence Ministry has already sought a 20% increase in capex because this year will be all about self-reliance in defence technologies for the future, such as early warning systems and combat drones as well. Now, what the government has done is this. They have now tried to bring parity between new and existing licenses in the defence sector. Earlier, some months ago, the government had liberalised FDI for companies seeking new licenses for manufacturing. And those companies were allowed to get FDI in the range of 74%. It was 49% earlier as the cap. That was increased to 74% for new licenses only. Now, in order to bring parity, companies which already have existing licenses and have investments, they will be able to increase investments from a 49% cap to a 74% cap as well. Now, this is a proposal which is under consideration by the DPIIT, which comes under the Ministry of Commerce, but it is squarely backed by the Ministry of Defence, is what we hear. The Defence Ministry had asked for this after getting suggestions from various quarters. They believe that this is going to increase India's prowess in defence manufacturing for the future and also help increase exports from here as well.
All right, Parikshit, many thanks for joining us. So further liberalisation there for the defence sector on the cards. A World Economic Forum survey among chief economists raises the red flag on public debt across emerging economies. Outlook for global growth remains weak despite marginal improvement. Nearly 60% of those polled expect modest to significant job losses due to artificial intelligence over the next 10 years. The survey was released just days before the annual summit kicks off in Davos. Ritu's here with the key takeaways. Ritu.
First up, on the global economic outlook, 53% of the economists now expect weaker growth in 2026. Now, that's still cautious, but it is a clear improvement from September when 72% were expecting a deterioration. So more of them now see stability and nearly 1 in 5 expect stronger growth as well. Bottom line is pessimism has eased, but confidence is still quite fragile. Now on to markets, where the biggest fault line is the Magnificent Seven dominating returns. They now make up 35% of the total index market cap, which is up from 20% in 2022, with valuations in the top 10% of historical ranges. On outlook, though, the economists are quite split on US AI stocks. 52% expect declines, but 40% still see an upside. But the sentiment is far more positive on China's AI stocks, with 68% expecting gains. Gold remains a key hedge. 46% expect further upside. crypto sentiment is sharply negative, 62% expecting declines, and the US dollar, where more than half expect some weakness. Next up is the risks, where global public debt has hit $102 trillion in 2024, and it is projected to approach 100% of global GDP by 2029, and that is emerging as the biggest risk. The stress is far higher in emerging markets, where debt and currency crisis dominate. For advanced economies, sovereign debt risks top the chart, followed by the likelihood of a corporate debt crisis. Now, government spending priorities are also moving fast. The clear winners are defense, digital infrastructure, and energy, which is driven by AI power demand. But what is getting crowded out in turn is education, it's climate, transport, and even research and innovation budgets are quite flat. So clearly, geopolitics and AI are now dictating spending choices. And finally, artificial intelligence, the defining force of the cycle. When asked how significant the direct impact of AI-linked investments is going to be on growth in the next 2 years, economists see the most significant impact on the US and China, lesser so on Europe and South Asia. As for the impact of AI on jobs, in the next 2 years, job losses are expected to be modest but not massive. But in the next decade, job disruption there on account of AI is expected to deepen.
All right, Ritu, many thanks for joining us. And of course, we'll bring you all the action from the World Economic Forum right here on CNBC-TV18 starting Sunday. The United States and Taiwan have reached a trade agreement to build chips and semiconductor factories in the U.S. As per the agreement, Taiwanese chip companies will invest at least $250 billion in the U.S. In return, the Trump administration will lower the reciprocal tariffs on Taiwan to 15%, down from 20%. The U.S. government will also commit to zero reciprocal tariffs on generic pharmaceuticals, aircraft components, and some natural resources. So that's the latest in the US-Taiwan bilateral deal. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney met Chinese President Xi Jinping, where both leaders announced a new strategic partnership. Carney's visit to China is the first by a Canadian Prime Minister in nearly a decade. Both leaders discussed clean energy, expanding trade in agriculture and food. Canada will also import 49,000 Chinese electric vehicles from China under preferential tariff rates.
Canada can thrive in a new system, but to do so, we must be ambitious. We must work at speed and scale to find new partners, to diversify our trade and attract unprecedented levels of investment in our country. And we must be pragmatic. That means we have to understand the differences between Canada and other countries, and then focus our efforts to work together where we're aligned. And it's with this approach that Canada is forging a new strategic partnership with China.
Well, Canada and China forging a new strategic partnership. Now, a trade deal between India and the European Union is inching closer. Top EU officials will travel to India for the 16th EU-India summit, which is scheduled for the 27th of January. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 there is a big possibility that both sides will sign a deal, and that trade deal is reasonably balanced. Well, we will end to a break, but up next, Wipro misses estimates in Q3, but Tech Mahindra delivers. That and more when we return. Well, the BJP-led Mahayuti has swept the municipal corporation elections across Maharashtra. Let's first focus on Mumbai, which in all likelihood will get its first BJP mayor. The Mahayuti is heading towards a massive victory and will control Asia's richest civic body. The BJP, which has historically fought the BMC polls in alliance with the undivided Shiv Sena, has emerged as the single largest party. This time, the BMC polls were also a battle for the Shiv Sena legacy after the bitter split in 2022. The Uddhav Thackeray faction of the Shiv Sena has outperformed Eknath Shinde's party, this despite the latter retaining the name and the symbol of the undivided Shiv Sena. Shinde, however, maintained his sway in Thane, his home bastion. A moment of truth for the Pawar faction as well. The party headed by Sharad Pawar and Ajit Pawar's NCP suffered humiliating defeats in Pune and neighbouring civic bodies. The BJP retained the Pune corporation by a huge margin. Away from the results in what comes as a unique feat, 3 members of the Matre family in Thane emerged victorious. But there's more to that. All of them had contested the elections on tickets of rival parties. On that note, let's go across to Santya Guru, who reports on the BJP's impressive BMC performance. Santya.
A big day for BJP in Mumbai as BJP has emerged victorious in these BMC elections held after 9 years. BJP has clearly stolen the show. Right now we are in Mumbai's Nariman Point area, and this is how this is BJP office in Mumbai, and this is how it's looking like right now. As you can see, the celebrations have started. So BJP and Shiv Sena contested these elections together. BJP as of now is leading on 90 plus seats, and the alliance will be able to appoint its mayor. But talking about Eknath Shinde, his performance is pretty low. As far as the alliance is concerned, it is emerging victorious, and definitely a big day for BJP, especially its Mumbai unit.
Sandhya, many thanks for joining us. That is the latest there on the BMC elections. Back to earnings. Wipro has reported a mixed Q3 with margins beating estimates. Revenue slightly short. Wipro's growth guidance also appears weaker. On the other hand, Tech Mahindra has exceeded expectations. The new labour code impacting profits of both companies by more than 550 crore rupees. In fact, India's top 5 IT companies have seen nearly 5,000 crore rupees shaved from their profits in Q3 due to the labour code. Rima is here with more on Wipro and Tech Mahindra's earnings. Rima.
Thanks so much for that. So let me start with Wipro. As you rightly pointed out, it's a good beat on the company's margins, but the Q4 guidance, that's the Jan to March quarter, is a bit disappointing. The company's top-line growth came in at 1.4%. EBIT margins have expanded to 17.6% versus 16.5%. So one reason for that is in Q2, the company had taken a hit of 50 basis points on its margins on account of a client bankruptcy. So that is not there. And plus, you've got the rupee tailwind. So margins have done well at 17.6%. But what will disappoint the street is the Q4 guidance, because the company had made a large acquisition, Harman DTS, which, according to analysts, could contribute up to 200 basis points in Q4. Yet the company is only guiding for 0 to 2% in terms of its Q4 guidance. So that is a bit disappointing. Deal wins for the company, particularly large deal wins, are also a tad bit disappointing. In current quarter, it's at less than $900 million versus $2.8 billion in Q3. Tech Mahindra, on the other hand, has delivered a pretty good beat on revenues, margins, and deal wins have come in at a 4-year high. The company's revenues have gone up by 1.7%. This is in a seasonally weak quarter. EBIT margins have expanded from a low of 4.7% in Q2 of FY24 to 13.1%. And even in Q3, margins have expanded by 100 basis points, coming in ahead of consensus expectation. This is the 9th consecutive quarter of a margin expansion for Tech Mahindra. Remember, the aspiration is to get to 15% margins. This was what was laid out by Mohit Joshi when he took charge. That comes to an end towards the end of FY27, Q4 FY27. So 15% is the goal. They're now at 13.1%. The company says the deal wins on an LTM basis. LTM is last 12 months, are also the highest that they've achieved in the last 5 years. And in Q3, deal wins have crossed $1 billion. Back to you.
All right, Rima, many thanks for joining us. Those are the tech earnings for you. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. The news will continue right here on CNBC-TV18. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a minute with more.